Hello, everybody. We are live. How are y'all doing? All right. Tonight, we are going to talk about the new Senate bill that wants to eliminate dual citizenship for U.S. Americans. Um, I thought I had the name of the person who asked me about this. They left a comment on last week's video and asked me my thoughts about this, and I have some thoughts. Shout out to you. I did not save your name in my notes. So maybe if I remember, I can go back and tag you in the description of this video. But yeah, this was a question I got on last in the comments. And so I thought we'd talk about it this week. Uh, if you are new here, hello, welcome. My name is Adelia Aborshade. I am a financial educator and coach. I retired 5 years ago when I turned 45 after a career in K-12 education. Welcome to my channel. Here we talk about like all of the money and financial stuff you never learned growing up, as well as how to travel the world solo. I am an avid solo traveler. I believe I've been to 60 countries, give or take. And we also talk about moving to another country, which is something I did 9.5 years ago. I left the US, and honestly, I haven't looked back. So, if those are things that you are interested in, you should be subscribed to this channel. You can take a moment right now and hit the subscribe button if you aren't already subscribed. That is really the only way to make sure that YouTube keeps bringing my content to your feed. Okay, so let's get into it. Maybe you were aware, or maybe this is news to you, but a senator from Ohio on December 1st, December 2nd, a guy named Bernie Moreno, a Republican, big shocker, introduced a bill. It's called the Exclusive Citizenship Act of 2025. And his idea behind this bill is that it is in the national interest of the United States that U.S. citizenship be held exclusively. And what that means is it is in the best interest of the United States for its citizens to only have citizenship in the U.S. And this is a bill sponsored by a man who was born in Colombia. He moved to the US, I think, when he was like 5, and renounced his Colombian citizenship at age 18. Okay. Um, so the idea behind this bill is that it would make it illegal for any US citizen to simultaneously hold citizenship in the US and another country. So, as you can imagine, um, this is kind of wild. Yeah, I'm with you so much for personal freedom. It is absolutely giving pick me. I think it is important to also think about the context of the situation in the US where this is happening. This is happening amongst where they're having ICE kidnap people off the street based on whether or not they appear to be foreign. Um, this is happening at the same time that the current administration is trying to remove birthright citizenship and repeal the 14th Amendment. And something important for our community to remember is that the only reason folks who look like me, and probably like most of y'all, have birthright citizenship in the United States is because of the 14th Amendment. So they are actively trying to repeal that. And you couple that with the administration's talk about stopping immigration completely. Like they don't want anyone to immigrate into the US. And they are, what do you call it? There's this push for repatriation, reimmigration. That's what they're calling it, reimmigration. So basically, if you are someone who immigrated to the US, you are basically undesirable and they want you gone. Okay, so all of those things are happening simultaneously in the United States. So when we think about this particular bill, it's not just this bill, it is part of a larger campaign of white supremacy, trying to strip away, at least for somebody my age, what we were often taught was kind of one of the biggest bragging points about the United States, you know, the melting pot, the tossed salad, however, whichever metaphor you want to use, that the United States is a place, it's multicultural, it's made up of people who've come from all over the world, yada, yada, yada. So I personally think it's not just about this particular bill, it is about the larger moment that we are experiencing right now in the United States. Um, I see y'all in the comments and I'm trying to mark things so I can make sure I come back to them. Okay, so let's talk about this, what the bill calls for, what are some obvious issues that I see with this bill, how does that impact folks like us? People like me, I am coming to you live from Mexico City. I have lived outside the United States since July of 2016. How could this possibly impact those of you who are planning a move abroad? We're going to cover all of that. If you've got questions, be sure to drop those in the chat. Okay, so he just proposed this bill in the Senate last week. And the basic parts of this bill is that it would prohibit any person who has US citizenship from having citizenship in another country. And it would go into effect in 180 days after it would be approved. Okay. It would give anybody who has dual citizenship at the time of enactment, it would give them 1 year to renounce all foreign citizenships or relinquish their US citizenship. Let's say you didn't know, you're somebody who holds dual citizenship and you were unaware that this had passed or what have you, or you just was like, I ain't doing it. According to the way the bill is written, your failure to renounce your foreign citizenship would be treated as a voluntary relinquishment of your US citizenship. That's important. Okay. So if within the 12 months after this bill was approved and became a law, if you didn't get rid of other citizenships that you already held, they would constitute that as you voluntarily giving up your US citizenship. Doesn't sound super voluntary to me, but it being voluntary is important because the existing laws that we have on the book, um, the Nationality Act, I forget what year that was passed. Basically the only way that a US citizen should give up their citizenship, it has to be voluntary. Okay. If, let's say, you're somebody who currently only holds US citizenship and this law were to pass, and after this law was in effect, you were to get another citizenship, The way this law is written, you would automatically, that would trigger the loss of your US citizenship. And the way it's a very short law. I've actually, or bill, because it is not a law yet. I have linked it in the description of this video. It's only like 4 pages long. The language in it is super, super clear. If they also call for the State Department and Homeland Security to establish a verification process to keep records. Now, who does this affect? This basically affects everybody. If you were a naturalized citizen in the US and you kept your original citizenship, you would be subject to this. If you are the US born child of a foreign citizen and you acquire that second nationality at birth. So I'm trying to think of a country I know that does that. But basically, if your parents' country, just because you were born in the US, if the country your parents are from, you automatically still get their citizenship, even though you were physically born in the US, this law would impact you. If you are a foreign born child of a US citizen, individuals who marry a foreign national and under the laws of that country automatically acquire the foreign spouse's citizenship, you would be affected by this. So really and truly, it's just about everybody. There's not really, they've not written any exceptions into this. And that's one of the many problems with this particular proposal. Okay, so that's the basics of this proposed law. And let's talk a little bit about what some of the problems or some of the issues that I see with this. If you are, well, first of all, will it pass? Is it constitutional? No, it is not constitutional. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second, because whether or not it's constitutional and whether or not the Senate and the House could vote on it and pass it anyway, we've seen them do that. We've seen either through executive action, like Donald Trump's executive order that supposedly repealed the 14th Amendment. It is currently being challenged in court. Let's say that this comes up for a vote in the Senate as it is currently written and in the House, and they pass it and the president signs off on it. Let's say all of that happens. That could happen and it still be unconstitutional. If it does pass, somebody will have to sue about the unconstitutionality of it, and then it will have to work its way through the court system. But based on previous court cases, it is not likely that this bill would be found to be constitutional. And that the main reason for that is because of that automatic, oh, if you don't do anything, you give up your citizenship, that's a problem. Okay. The bill's main mechanism provides for an automatic loss of your US citizenship from inaction when it comes to relinquishing your other country's citizenship. That is in direct conflict with long-standing precedents. There was a case in 1967 that went to the Supreme Court that decided that Congress does not have the power under the Constitution to strip a citizen of nationality without the citizen's voluntary renunciation. Under the Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment, a US citizen cannot lose citizenship unless he willingly surrenders it. Okay, so when I told you at the beginning of this video that the way he has written the bill, that if you don't do anything, you are somebody who currently holds 2, 3, 4 citizenships, and you don't do anything after that 1 year grace period has passed, he has written into the bill that you automatically, that you voluntarily relinquish those. But that's tricky. How can your inaction be a voluntary relinquishment of your citizenship? So that's one way that it is probably going to be found to be unconstitutional if it were to pass. There was a second court case in 1980 where they used the court case from 67 basically as precedent, and it was reaffirmed. It also made it clear that the government, the burden is on the government, not on you. The burden is on the government of proving by a preponderance of evidence that whatever you're doing to give up your US citizenship. So let's say you move to a country and you become a citizen there, and it's a country that if you're a citizen there, you can't be a citizen somewhere else. So like Spain, right? That second court case said that they have to prove that you taking on that second citizenship was voluntary and your intention was to relinquish your US citizenship. Just the mere performance of the act alone is not sufficient. They have to prove intention. So this flies directly in the face of what he's trying to do with this bill. So that's two of the reasons it is probably going to be unconstitutional. There are some other issues with this bill that there's some tax implications. There are some implications when it comes to Social Security and things like that. But before we get into that, I want to come back and see if y'all had some questions or things that we needed to talk about in the comments. That is the word I was looking for. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about at this question. At the same time, it seems that residency would be safer than getting citizenship. At this time, given all of the actions that are being taken in the United States to make it difficult for people with connections to other countries, either to live in the United States, come to the United States, to remain in the United States, is it such a far-fetched idea that first they come for dual citizenship and then because if having dual citizenship is or 4 citizenships or whatever is dividing your loyalty, you can't be loyal to the United States if you have a French passport, if you have a Mexican passport. Is it that big of a stretch to then say, well, you hold residency in another country? I don't think they are the same thing, but I could see how these same people and let's think about what their ultimate end goal is. It is to restrict non-white people from being in the United States. Okay. And so, second residency, third residency, as of right now, in this moment we are in, is safe, but I don't know. I think it's a slippery slope. I could see us going down that road too if they were to go ahead with this. How does this affect residency abroad? Currently, the way it is written, if it were to pass the way it is written, it would not impact residency. Part of me thinks they just haven't thought about that yet, because often a lot of folks in the States often confuse residency with having a second passport and aren't 100% clear that they are separate things. So currently, this would not impact those of us who hold residency in more than one country. Because yes, you can have residency, like I am a permanent resident of Mexico. Um, I have been temporary residents in other countries, and that does not impact my, or did not impact my citizenship in the United States and did not grant me citizenship in those countries. But I'm not convinced that this is where they stop, that this is the line that they draw. Um, I wondered if anybody was going to bring this up. Um, Here's okay. So the First Lady of the United States and her son both hold dual citizenship. Um, Also, so for this particular law, they would have to give up their Slovenian citizenship. A lot, I think, the assumption they're making, excuse me, is that the United States is the greatest country in the world. So anybody faced with this decision and with this choice, of course, would excuse me, choose the United States. Let me grab my water. Ugh. Um, I think they think everybody would choose the United States. I also think they are mistaken. Okay, excuse me. Okay, I think I'm better now. Um, okay, okay. So yeah, I don't think this is where they stop. I think they have a very specific version or vision for the United States, and it does not include the vast majority of us. And they are going to try and find many ways to weed us out, to put us in positions where they can extract our labor, but we don't have rights, we don't have resources, things like that. Okay. So, um, obvious issues with this, like the First Lady has dual citizenship, but also there are, and I meant to look this up before, give me a second. There are quite, I'm trying to think, talk, and speak all at the same time and type. That's a lot. There are quite many uh, politicians in the United States government who hold dual citizenship. Let's see if we can get a number. Okay. So there is not an exact number for how many people in politics or in, okay, let me refine this search, in Congress, because that's really what I think is interesting. I know we have this number. Um, there's quite a few folks in Congress that have dual nationality. Some of them are the children of people who immigrated from elsewhere, but a lot of them have dual citizenship with Israel. And so you have to wonder if the language that this man has used for this bill about having dual citizenship divides your loyalties and all of that kind of stuff, why not write a bill that states that if you're going to serve in a elected position in the federal government, that you have to renounce the citizenship you have in another country? Because that does seem logical, that having citizenship in the US and Russia and you're a senator, like there's some conflict of interest there, right? But for like regular people, I don't see it so much. This bill was not written that way. There is nothing written in this bill that would make that go into effect for those people. So I find that interesting. And the way this bill is written, it would be everybody. So us regular people, but also those folks in Congress. And if we gonna keep it real, we know that a lot of the folks who have dual nationality, particularly US Israeli, are working to make sure that US policy favors the other country that they are citizens in, right? Um, so those people would be impacted by this law the way it is, by this bill the way it is written. Are those people going to vote for something that would force them to give that up? I am doubtful. So that's another reason I don't foresee it passing. Okay. Now, let's get into some of the issues that I don't think the bill's author thought about. And I think these are things that will keep it from passing, because if there's one thing about the US government, they want to get their tax money. Okay. And the way this bill is currently written, the way it would go into effect, if it went into effect as is, would kind of hit the US government's wallet a little bit. Okay. So typically, if you were to renounce your US citizenship, which has to be a voluntary process, right? Um, oh, wait, where did I put that? Okay. So to renounce your US citizenship, you must voluntarily and with the intent of relinquishing your US citizenship, you have to appear in person at either a US consular office or diplomatic office in a foreign country. You cannot renounce your US citizenship while you are in the US. This is the way the current law is written. Okay. You have to sign an oath of renunciation. You pay a fee of $2,350, and you have to be a citizen of another country. You cannot be stateless. So currently, I only hold US citizenship. I could not renounce without having another citizenship. Okay. So the way this bill is currently written, it would eliminate the requirement for you to appear in person to relinquish. And remember, that's part of proving that you're doing it voluntarily, that that is your intent. And it would eliminate a $2,300 fee that the government would collect. Generally speaking, the US government is not in the business of saying, hey, you know that fee you owe us? That's okay. Don't worry about it. So there's that. There's also another potential loss of revenue for them is the US exit tax. Not everyone who renounces US citizenship has to pay an exit tax. You will see people online talking about it, but it is not something that everybody pays. It is particular to folks who have I think you have to have a net worth of $2 million or more on the date that you renounce, that you expatriate. Okay. The exit tax, which used to be called the expatriation tax, it's a capital gains tax that is imposed on people who renounce their citizenship or people who give up their green card after long-term residence. Basically, they don't want somebody to make lots of money in the US and then give up their citizenship, because remember, the United States is one of two countries that tax you based on your citizenship, not where you live, not where you have residency. No matter where you are in the world, if you are a US citizen, the US government would like to tax your income. Okay. So think about it. If you're giving up your US citizenship, The US doesn't have the right to tax your money anymore. And if you're somebody who has lots of investments, property, stocks, whatever, and you just hold on to them, you renounce your citizenship and you leave, the US never gets to collect their tax money. They don't like that. Okay, so that's where this expatriation tax originally came from. Um, but it is folks who have a net worth over $2 million, an annual net income tax liability over the last 5 years is more than like $200,000. Um, if you are non-compliant in your IRS filings, they might come after if you meet any of those, you probably owe this exit tax. Well, the way this bill is written, if you get a new citizenship, let's say right now you only have US citizenship, but you are somebody who meets these qualifications. If you get a new citizenship, you don't even have a chance to renounce. Remember, it's an automatic thing. That means the US government never gets to collect their tax money. I don't see that happening. I don't see the United States giving up an opportunity to tax you, to collect a fee from you. I don't see that happening. So that's another two reasons I don't particularly think this bill will pass as it is currently written. So there are lots of issues with this bill, beside the fact that we're taking away people's freedom and, trying to isolate them from their heritage and all of that. Um, okay, I find this interesting. I cannot read those little letters. TRC says, I feel like this attempt would get pushback from rich people who like to hide their income and investments in other countries, because some countries you can essentially buy citizenship. Um, I don't think that the folks who are in the position to buy citizenship somewhere else, I don't think that they will be against this law for that reason that you're saying. Actually, I think that's the part that they're not clicking with. I think that's the part that they're not cluing in on. I think they are overestimating how many folks who have the money to buy citizenship, to get citizenship by investment, will opt to do that and let go of their US citizenship, particularly people who are very wealthy. Like Tina Turner is a famous person who opted to give up her US citizenship. She hadn't lived in the United States for decades, but they were still taxing her wealth. And so that's one of the reasons she renounced. Typically, renunciation of US citizenship has been limited to very wealthy individuals because financially it made more sense for them to give up their US citizenship because they wouldn't have to pay taxes to a country they didn't live in. So I think the person who wrote this bill, the other people who think like them in the Senate and the House, I think they are completely underestimating the folks who got like money, thinking that they will say, you know what? No, I only want to have US citizenship. Now, 10 years ago, you could get citizenship in the Caribbean for $100,000. Those days are over. Now you're looking at a minimum $250,000. In Europe, it's half a million euros, €1 million. But let's think about it. Over the last year, what has happened to the perceived value of US citizenship? It's gone down. So if I am a wealthy person and I have the ability to get citizenship in a country with a stronger passport than the US, and I eliminate the US trying to tax me. I don't think it's a easy thing to say, oh no, I'm going to stay in the US. I'm going to keep my US citizenship. I think they have overestimated the whole America is the greatest place on earth, and everybody wants to be there. I think they have also overestimated, because we know their desire is for a white supremacist country. And I think they are working on the assumption that any whites faced with the choice of keeping the citizenship they inherited from their parents, grandparents, or going out and getting another citizenship, I think they are over indexing that those people will opt for the US. Because personally, if I had the ability to get citizenship in the European Union by descent, I would take that. um, Something else that they have not considered, and I don't know how this would play out, there are some countries where when you are a citizen by birth, you can't get rid of that. So, like the Netherlands is a country like that. If you were born in the Netherlands, you moved to the US, you got US citizenship too, and now with this new bill, if it were to pass, and they're like, you have to choose. Tec- Technically, you can't choose the US citizenship because you cannot give up your Netherlands citizenship because you were born there. That's how their laws are written. That's not taken into consideration at all in the wording of this bill. I think the man who wrote this, other than being an immigrant himself and being someone who gave up his own citizenship, I think that's the extent of what he knows, because he didn't address any of these things in the wording of this bill. Um, there are also the issues of how do you enforce this? Currently, there is no system in place, there is no structure in place to track which US citizens have multiple citizenships, multiple passports. None of that infrastructure exists. And in order to enforce this the way it is written, it would need to exist. So how is that going to happen? Okay, that's not been included in this at all. Okay, looking at the chat. Oh yeah, this whole thing is very, very problematic. And while I don't think it will pass, or if it does pass, um, although I know it is unconstitutional, whether or not the courts will actually find it unconstitutional, that's a gamble in the world that we live now. But I am very concerned about the larger plan here, the larger plan to strip folks like us, Black Americans, of our citizenship. Because if you repeal the 14th Amendment, our ability to be seen as US citizens becomes suspect. It's up in the air. And I know some folks are like, well, we were born here, but that's the whole point. If you get rid of birthright citizenship, if you get rid of the 14th Amendment, the fact that we were born in the United States and our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents were born there, that no longer means anything. And we already know that, as they are trying to remove people who are immigrants, whether they have documents or not, and I've discussed this on this channel before, how that is leaving a hole in the labor supply and in our supply chain. And we've got these for-profit prisons. It doesn't take a whole lot of imagination to figure out, oh, we're just going to remove these people over here and place them over there. What happens to Black Americans if we are no longer US citizens? You know, I don't like the possible answers that come to mind when I consider those questions. And so that's why I find this attempt to be so alarming, because I'm thinking about the larger ramifications. Okay, how does birthright citizenship work with this country regarding being born in this country to parents born in another country? Um, the way this is written, if you are born in the United States, currently as it exists, you have birthright citizenship, whether or not your parents are US citizens. But if you, depending on the country your parents are from, you may get citizenship from their country at birth. And the way this thing is written, you would have to choose. And if you did not actively choose, they would automatically remove one of them. So that's a mess. That's a mess. Okay. What if this anti-dual citizenship bill fails, but Orangey blows up tax treaties with other countries, thereby forcing, okay, the United States does not have tax treaties with every country in the world. Okay. So, because if you are a US citizen, if you are a green card holder, a permanent resident of the United States, if you meet those two qualifications, you are always required to file, and the US wants to tax your global income, whether you are currently living in the United States or somewhere else. Now, that doesn't change. Even if he goes off the deep end and pisses everybody else off, and they're like, whatever tax treaty we have with you, we're getting rid of it. That doesn't change. The United States still wants to tax your global income. Now, every tax treaty that exists is different depending on the country. And that's more about who gets to tax your money first, that sort of thing. So I don't know that we can say across the board the removal of a tax treaty somewhere is automatically going to make your tax liability higher. Okay. And we're going to add a note here. I am not a tax professional, y'all. None of this is advice, purely for educational and entertainment purposes only. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. All right. So another thing that I want to point out to people, that the way this bill is currently written doesn't bring into consideration, but what happens if you have membership in a Native American tribe? Is that considered a citizenship? Would you, okay, based on tribe affiliation has thus far never been considered a citizenship, because tribes are considered to be sovereign dependent nations inside the US, which sounds super, super weird. But if everybody is reasonable and actually follows the law when it comes to interpreting this thing, if it were to pass, it should not force Native American people to have to choose. Okay, but notice the qualifier I gave there. That's assuming people follow the letter of the law, and you know, and we know there's a lot of not following the letter of the law right now. Um, we talked about enforcement. Uh, Native American folks could have an issue. We talked about going back to the enforcement thing, there would be a massive administrative burden if you're going to track every person in the country who holds multiple passports in a environment where they're trying to spend less on things. I don't know how that would happen. And then I don't have a lot of faith that they would be able to institute this without making some mistakes. Okay, so there's that problem as well. And also, I wanted to talk about Social Security because I learned something new. I was always taught that like it didn't matter if you were a citizen or not. If you paid into Social Security, you know, if you've got a green card, if you are a US citizen, but even if you were to renounce because you paid into Social Security, you would still get your Social Security no matter where you are in the world. Turns out that might not be the case. And I'm trying to look through my notes where I wrote that. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Okay. So let's say you either actually voluntarily, if this were to happen, you actually voluntarily give up your US citizenship, or you went through the process of renouncing. There are specific, whether or not you would still be entitled to your Social Security benefits is going to be tied to the country that you have citizenship in. Well, wait, I feel like I did not write this properly and I don't want to say it wrong. So give me a moment. Uh, do I still have it open? Okay, here it is. Okay. Another possibly overlooked consequence involves Social Security benefits for those living abroad. Many people, especially foreign nationals, US citizens who used to live and work in the US, might not be aware that the Social Security Administration treats non citizens differently depending on their country of citizenship, not where they live. This was news to me. I knew there were countries that if you lived in those countries, they would not deposit your Social Security check in a bank. So, like Cuba, North Korea, I think Russia is on that list. I did not know that the country you hold citizenship, if you are no longer a US citizen, could impact getting your Social Security benefits. Okay. The Social Security Administration has a list of foreign individuals who retain citizenship only in certain, you have to basically have citizenship in a country from an approved list if you want to keep getting your benefits. Lose US citizenship and keep citizenship solely in a non-listed country, and your benefits will stop. So if you no longer have US citizenship and you are a citizen in a country that's not on the list, your benefits stop unless you return to the United States once every 6 months and lawfully remain there for a full month each time before payments are to resume. Okay, now here's the kicker. When you renounce your US citizenship, if you lose your US citizenship, your ability to enter the United States and how long you can be in the United States is directly related to what is the visa policy for the country in which you are a citizen. So, for me, I am currently a permanent resident in Mexico. uh, I had already been working toward getting my Mexican citizenship. So let's say I get my Mexican citizenship and I get rid of my US citizenship. I have to follow whatever the visa rule is for Mexicans. The fact that I have been born in the United States, the fact that my family is there, that doesn't matter. I have to go by. So think about this. If you hold, what's a country that the US is being really stupid toward right now? So let's say you happen to hold US and Venezuelan citizenship, and you this thing happens, you keep the Venezuelan citizenship. If and you are getting you're like, hey, but I'm entitled to Social Security. Given how the US is acting right now, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that Venezuela is probably not on the list. So if I'm a Venezuelan citizen and I want to keep getting my Social Security, I've got to go to the US. The US is not issuing visas for Venezuelans. So I get screwed out of my Social Security. So I think that's another reason. Once people start to figure that out, that may be another reason that this thing does not pass. But that was news to me, and so I wanted to share that with y'all. That if you were considering giving up your U.S. citizenship separate from this proposed bill, something that I would implore you to investigate further is, as a citizen of the country you are considering, would you still be able to get your Social Security benefits? And given the world that we are currently in now, there is a part of me that very much feels like, oh, your country is fine today, but in 2 months they've decided that, oh no, we don't want to deal with people from that country, and now all of a sudden you're off the list. So this has the potential to be a huge mess. Okay. And there was something else that just popped in my head that I remembered, like, oh, don't forget to mention this. And then you know what I did? I forgot it. And that is perimenopause. So hopefully it comes back to my brain quickly. Um, Again, as of right now, this proposed law does not impact permanent residency as things stand now. What will things be like in 6 months? What will things be like in a year? Um, that's a concern. Hold on a second. Had to unplug my mic because my computer was about to die. Hopefully the sound quality isn't too bad. Um, let's see what other questions are here. There are also, this is something to consider. Um, you know, if your money is currently in US banking institutions, your investment accounts are in US firms, technically, the way things are right now, not being a US citizen doesn't automatically remove your access, but I don't know. We're in unprecedented times. And so, the best we can do is keep up with things and, make adjustments and pivots where we need to. So, if you are somebody who is considering getting an additional citizenship, I have the possibility of maybe 3 additional citizenships. should you like put that on hold because of the potential of this bill? I don't think so. Again, I think the larger picture is the US government seems to be wanting to restrict people's ability to enter and exit the country. That is what is alarming to me. So, if I would be looking at ways in which, like some of y'all have mentioned, getting residency somewhere else that allows you to get out of the US and go somewhere else. If you're watching this right now and you are a US citizen and you do not have your US passport, I would work on that, because I could see a version of things where they make it more difficult, particularly if we're right, if I'm right, and they have over indexed on how many people would choose the US. And it turns out that a lot of people are like, no, I'm gonna take my chances somewhere else. I could see them wanting to stop people from leaving. And the easiest way to stop people from leaving is to make it harder to get a passport. So if you don't currently have your US passport, that is where I would start. Now, there are many reasons not to give up your US citizenship. Okay. But I think the takeaway for us is to make sure that you have as many options as possible. So making sure that you have your US passport. And if you're not to the point that you're ready to consider citizenship elsewhere, think about residency options. Where are countries you could qualify for residency? If you had been thinking about, oh, I'm gonna get residency in Mexico, I'm gonna get residency in Panama, I'm thinking about Portugal. Y'all know this. Today's prices are not tomorrow's. Today's policies, today's rules are not tomorrow's. So I think the time for action is now. That if these are things you had already been considering, I think it's time to stop waiting and start taking action. Okay. All right. So that is all that I have for tonight. I hope that you found this helpful, and that if there are some people in your life that you think like, oh, they don't know about this, they've not considered these things, maybe you share this conversation with them. I love this. Flutter by give passports as holiday gifts. Absolutely. Absolutely. Particularly if you are somebody who has already left the United States and you feel that things are going in a certain direction and you want to help the people you love, your family, your friends, whomever, have the options to make moves, that's that's a great gift to give. All right. Um, that's it for tonight. I will add it, but I believe I will be going live again on Thursday night with a special guest. I will post that information. Until then, y'all take care, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye, guys.